Well, hello and welcome to Binge Watch, the podcast where we take a look at the hottest new TV and film releases on streaming television platforms. I'm Hannah Fernando, the group editor of Woman and Woman and Home magazine.
And I'm Ian McEwan, writer on TV and Satellite Week, TV Times and What's on TV magazines. And today we're looking at the new releases that will be available from Friday the 8th of March 2024, including Julianne Moore in the real-life royal saga Mary and George on Sky Atlantic and Now, and Guy Ritchie's crime caper spin-off The Gentleman on Netflix.
And we'll also be checking out Peter Farrelly's film comedy Ricky Stanicky on Prime Video and the return of superpower comedy Extraordinary to Disney+. But first, Ian, what is in the news?
Dennis Quaid will star in the Paramount Plus drama Happy Face about a serial killer whose estranged daughter sets out to discover whether an innocent man is due to be executed for her father's crime. What else is in the news, Hannah?
Well, Prime Video's as yet untitled documentary will follow the last 12 days of Roger Federer's professional tennis career and include interviews with rivals Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray. Oh, that sounds good, doesn't it?
Well, a pretty good week this week, I would say. We're going to start off on Prime Video with a film comedy called Ricky Stanicky. It arrived on Thursday the 7th of March, and here's a clip.
Stanicky, what up, man? Are you serious? Have someone call me when you get out of surgery, all right?
You should drive out there. Ricky's been there for you guys your whole lives.
The devil's in the details, my friend. It worked! Atlantic City, here we come.
What we got?
Ricky's cancer's back.
Why does it have to be cancer? Won't everybody get worried?
Yeah, and that's going to take us right into the World Series.
To Ricky Stanicky, the best friend we never had.
So this comes from Peter Farrelly, who has been involved in two of my all-time favourite gross-out comedies, Dumb and Dumber and There's Something About Mary, both of which I've watched many times. It stars John Cena, who is a WWE wrestler. It also stars Zac Efron. And the premise is there are three male friends, and we start with a flashback to their childhood where they're playing a prank on Halloween. It goes badly wrong, and they blame it on a made-up boy called Ricky Stanicky. Fast forward, they're grown-ups now. They're all in relationships. One of them's about to have a baby, and it transpires that they've carried on using this fictitious friend, Ricky Stanicky, as an excuse to go off on trips together, where it's to watch sport or go to a gig or whatever. Anyway, they're doing it this time to go to Atlantic City, to go to see a DJ perform, and also to do a bit of gambling. For reasons I won't go into, they find themselves in a situation where they either have to admit that Ricky Stanicky is just made up and they've been basically lying to their friends and family for all these years, or they have to produce him and bring him to a function. Okay. And it so happened that when they were in Atlantic City, they met this character who's played by John Cena, who is, well, his stage name is Rock Hard Rod. He does a rather raunchy, it's a kind of karaoke show, which, that's definitely the gross out element of this. It pans out that they decide, even though he's a sort of rather out of control alcoholic, they decide to hire him to turn up and pretends to be Ricky, and they give him the backstory of all the excuses over the years and the things that are supposed to have happened to Ricky, where he's worked, any kind of illnesses he suffered, etc., etc. So he turns up and, we see how it pans out. There's plenty to enjoy in this. I would say the tone is a little uneven because sometimes it goes for the sort of feel-good factor, which falls a bit flat, I think. It's at its best when things are going horrendously wrong. But, I did enjoy it. I don't think it's up there with Farrelly's best comedies. It's got William H. Macy is in the cast as Zac Efron's boss at work. So if you think too hard about the plot, it kind of falls apart. So I would recommend just suspend your disbelief. Because, of course, the things that happened in Dumb and Dumber and There's Something About Mary were pretty unbelievable, but they were so good and so funny and so well performed. You just got swept along with it. So, yeah, I would just say don't worry about the plot too much and just enjoy the ride, because there are some great set pieces and there's plenty to enjoy. So, yes, I laughed. What did you think, Hannah?
Well, this had me when I knew Zac Efron was in it, to be perfectly honest with you. He didn't have to do much for it to be a hit. But you know what? I think you've kind of summed it up. There are lots of films and series like this where you do have to suspend, any kind of sense of reality. Because if you do, and you really start to pull it apart, it kind of falls apart at the seams because it isn't credible and it isn't authentic in places. But if you take it at face value of what it's meant to do, which is just a good few laughs, that is kind of what it does. And I can just imagine men, particularly all over the globe, thinking this is such a good idea to do this so that they can sort of get away from their partners and go off with their mates. And, I think it does what it says on the tin. It does have a few laughs. There are a few weird step changes. I think the kind of emotional side of it perhaps doesn't work so well because that's not what it's really about, and it probably tries a bit too hard. But I think in the main, if you fancy a bit of a belly laugh, you'll get one out of this.
We move across to Sky Atlantic, Sky Box Sets and Now TV for our next offering. It's a period drama called Mary and George. It arrived on Tuesday the 5th of March. And here's a clip.
My son. Change does not come unless you grab it by the hand. King James. So cockstruck it's like a curse. Give the king whatever he wants.
May I perform for you?
Yeah, so this is a new series and it's based on a non-fiction book by Benjamin Woolley. And Julianne Moore was brought in to the project, I think, to make things a bit different. And that's certainly what it is. So this is a historical drama. And Julianne Moore, actually her British accent is pretty good in the most. And she plays Mary Villiers, who's the mother of four, who's just absolutely determined, fiercely determined, will do anything to secure her family's financial future. And she does this through her son, George. And the reason this is so different is because some would say that her take on the part is different to perhaps how someone might have behaved or been at this time. And she kind of completely decries that and says, no, actually, this isn't. This is how, she's got into the nitty gritty, the kind of the crux of something like this in times like this, when money was everything and power and being seen in the right circles. And so she basically finds out that King James, who's played by Mayfly star Tony Curran, is in a sexual relationship with his advisor. And so she suddenly realises that it could be her son George who takes his fancy. Instead, of course, mixing in the king's circle would mean literally that you're probably sorted, certainly financially, for a while. And you just see her, the language, the conversations, the sex scenes, and of the same sex are probably just very different to anything we've seen in historical film series so far. And I think, will people be shocked? I'm not sure they'll be shocked, but I think it's just very, very different. And actually that's probably a reason to like it, because I think with a lot of these series, they can be sort of a bit samey, really, and this certainly isn't. But you see how this relationship between the two men is quite transactional. It's that they can see it suits everybody, but then feelings get involved. You see how the women behave around each other and how nasty it can really get, how feral it can get at times, to be honest with you. It's just quite, I don't know, it's quite outrageous in places. Mary is an incredibly direct woman, determined to get exactly what she wants. So I think it's really quite well done. It's quite pacey, and it's something really, a different take, I think. And I think people enjoy it. What do you think, Ian?
I thought it was very good, and Julianne Moore absolutely stamps her star quality on it as Mary Villiers, who, yeah, she does have a secret in her past. She's a bit of a social climber, and we learn that if it comes out, then it will be her downfall. Anyway, as you say, she has a spare, a second son, as opposed to the heir, who's a pretty boy, and she sends him off to France to learn how to be a gentleman, whether that's fencing or dancing, speaking French. And that whole segment is really well done, very stylish, very raunchy. There's a lot of sex in this, I must say. It reminds me in some ways, the tone of it, there's a little bit of The Great, as in the drama about Catherine the Great, a little bit of The Favourite as well, I think, The Tudors in terms of the raunch, and perhaps The Madness of King George, the Alan Bennett film, in that it brings a sort of believably modern sensibility to the dialogue, but without it sounding anachronistic, if you know what I mean, but also not sounding too oldie worldy as well. So yeah, Nicholas Galitzin is very good as George, who becomes the king's new favourite. I mean, all the performances are strong. I really like Tony Curran as the king. There's a lot of backstabbing and political intrigue going on. Moore is in terrific form as well. So, yeah, if you like your period dramas and you're not averse to a little bit of raunch, I think you'll enjoy this, because it really is high quality, and it stood out among this week's offerings. Over on Disney Plus, and arriving on Wednesday the 6th of March, we have the return of a superhero comedy called Extraordinary, and here's a clip.
It's your new chapter, remember?
So, things are actually going okay for me. I have a boyfriend. I've given him some tips on how to win over my mom. Agree with her. She's always right. This top makes me look fat.
Couldn't agree more, Mary. Huge.
This has been described as Derry girls with superpowers. That's not a bad description. And it does actually have the Derry girls and Great Pottery Throwdown actor Siobhan McSweeney in it. It is the second series, and you really do need to go back and watch series 1 if you haven't already seen it, just to get the gist of who's who, what's what, because it's quite a peculiar universe that it's set in. So it takes place in London, and it's in a world, as they say, where when you turn 18, you get your superpower. Everyone has a superpower, and some of them are pretty strange. Anyway, Jen, played by Mairead Tyers, didn't get her superpower when she turned 18. And so part of the show is about her quest to try and get the superpower. You know, she's very frustrated. She's got a best friend whose superpower is communing with the dead. She's also her flatmate. So she is Carrie, played by Sophia Oxenham. Then you also have Carrie's boyfriend, Cash, played by Bilal Hasner, and he can rewind time. Okay. Then you also have Jizzlord. Yes, it's quite rude in places, played by Luke Rollison, and he is a shapeshifter who spent several years as a cat. Okay, it's all pretty straightforward, isn't it? So, as we pick up the action, Jen is seeking professional advice on getting her superpower. Last week we had Noel Fielding as Dick Turpin. Well, this week we have his mighty boosh partner in crime, Julian Barrett, joins the cast, and he's the expert who's trying to help Jen. And in episode 1, he takes her into a sort of visual representation of her mind, which is very funny. Meanwhile, there was a cliffhanger at the end of season 1, which meant that Jizzlord suddenly discovered that actually he has a partner and a child. So that complicates matters. Also, Carrie and Cash had split up at the end of the last series, even though he kept turning back time to before she'd split up with him. Just lots of great ideas like that. And it subverts the superhero genre in a slightly similar way to the American series, The Boys. So I think it's fresh, original, very funny, great characters. So recommended, but yes, do go back and watch the first series. Hannah, I'm not sure it's quite up your street, but what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, when you said, are you keeping up? That was kind of where I got lost. This is not my kind of thing, which, anyone who listens to this will know. But I do think as you say, you need to have watched the first one in order to be able to, the first season, in order to be able to understand exactly what's going on here. And I suppose in some ways it is, like you say, it's very original. It is funny in places, and you can kind of, and you delve more into the characters. But enough said about Jizzlord, really, frankly, at that point, when you said that, and you don't need to know anymore.
We're going to finish on Netflix with a new drama series that is a spin-off from a Guy Ritchie crime caper. It's called The Gentleman. It arrived on Thursday the 7th of March, and here is a clip.
Must have come as a bit of a shock. Inheriting a house, title.
As the new landlord, you will receive a significant amount of money. In return, letting us carry out our activities.
You's like a dink in it. What the
This was inspired by Guy Ritchie's 2019 film, which had the same name, and it was a massive box office hit. It had Matthew McConaughey in and Hugh Grant, and this is now an 8-part drama, and it's about an aristocratic family sort of living in this incredible estate, and when the aristocrat Eddie Horniman, who is played by the White Lotus's Theo James, his father dies and he's left this estate and has this new title of the Duke of Halstead. And what it kind of pulls apart is the idea that this aristocratic world is any different to any other world or a thug world, I should say, or an underground world, because in order to upkeep this huge estate, the father had actually been using an East End gang who was using his property to grow cannabis, and he was taking a big cut off it. But once he's passed away, kind of loads of problems happen. You're dealing with the drug world, throws up loads of issues, and it can be very bloody in time. But I think the juxtaposition with these kind of really quite posh aristocrats and then these kind of thugs, the kind of people that are serving time in prison, is really quite interesting and actually works really, really well. If you don't like blood, it's not for you. There's a lot of blood splattering around, but if you like Guy Ritchie's films, you'll know that anyway. Vinnie Jones is in it, Ray Winston, Jolie Richardson. I mean, it's an absolute stellar cast, and all those people play the exact roles you'd imagine they're playing. Those kind of characters that just deliver those one-liners that will be repeated for years to come. I think I really enjoyed it. I was a bit worried that it might be a bit hammy, because sometimes these things can be, particularly with people like Ray Winston and Vinnie Jones in there doing just what they normally do. I think they're brilliant, by the way, but, just doing that same old thing. But it doesn't feel that way at all. It feels really quite fresh, and I really, really enjoyed it. How about you, Ian?
I enjoyed episode 1, I must say. I think you can draw a line back from Guy Ritchie to the original film, The Italian Job, starring Michael Caine, in that it had the similar thing of kind of the criminal underworld and the relationship with sort of high society. So you had the very posh Mr. Bridger, played by Noel Coward, in prison, and then you had Michael Caine's heist gang. Anyway, Ritchie is doing what he does best in this. I did see the film which inspired it, The Gentleman, which starred Matthew McConaughey, and it had another scene-stealing performance in the renaissance of Hugh Grant, again, sort of playing against type, the type of role that made him famous first time around. Yes, you have Eddie, who is in the forces, and he comes home to the sort of family's country estate when his father, played by Edward Fox, is dying and unexpectedly inherits, because again, he's the spare, he's not the heir, but his brother is it's a very funny character. His brother Freddie, played by Daniel Ings, is a very feckless individual and up to his ears in debt, unfortunately, to this Liverpudlian gangster played by the brilliant Peter Serafinovich. So really nice to see him in this. As you say, we got Vinnie Jones doing his thing, bit of Ray Winston. You've got Carl Fring from Breaking Bad, Giancarlo Esposito, as a drug dealer wanting to buy the estate. So yeah, it's great, it's stylish, it's funny, it's exactly what you want from Guy Ritchie, and he's really on form with this. And in fact, you could easily imagine this being a film, but yeah, it's a spin-off from one of his films. So yeah, I think there's plenty to recommend it. Now we've got to that time, Hannah, where we find out what the heck you've been binge watching this week.
Saturday night takeaway, of course. Absolutely love it. I'm so sad it's in its 20th and final year, or they're taking a hiatus anyway. And also, I watched a bit of a step change from Saturday night takeaway. I watched Inside Our Autistic Minds, which was presented by Chris Packham, and it made me cry. It was just so, I don't know, it was sad but inspiring somehow. Really worth checking out.
Well, perhaps because we were covering Mary and George, I rewatched the film The Madness of King George, which does get shown quite a lot on network TV. Screenplay by Alan Bennett, and a virtual who's who of British acting talents, including the late great Nigel Hawthorne and Helen Mirren, Rupert Everett, Adrian Scarborough, Rupert Graves. My goodness, it's a very, very fine piece of work, adapted from a stage play. We've just got time to look ahead to next week's offering. So what's coming up on the Binge Watch menu, Hannah?
Tobias Menzies and Anthony Boyle star in Manhunt, the true story of the hunt for Abraham Lincoln's killer, which will be on Apple TV+.
And I think I know who's going to be getting this one. Lindsay Lohan has a romantic dream come true in the Netflix fantasy comedy Irish Wish. So we look forward to those and much, much more. But in the meantime, listeners, keep watching.